On a chilly November morning back in 1985, a hunter was quietly plodding through the forests of Bear Brook State Park near Allenstown, New Hampshire. Located around 15 miles from the state capital of Concord, the park spans over 10,000 acres of wetlands and rolling forests, making it one of the state's largest areas of natural beauty. Bear Brook also offers a network of trails for hiking, biking, and horseback riding, tracks which weave through dense woods that teem with wildlife. Yet the park's tranquil beauty belies a darker history, marked by a series of grim discoveries which cast a somber shadow over the serene landscape. This is the story of the Chameleon Killer. As the hunter walked near the charred ruins of an old burned-down general store, his eyes caught a glint of metal from some nearby underbrush. Curiosity got the better of him. Then, on closer inspection, he found the glint belonged to the rusted metal of a 55-gallon oil drum. Unable to temper his burning curiosity, the man heaved the drum upright and then pried its lid from its moorings. But when he did so, he was faced with a picture of pure horror. Stuffed into the drum were the plastic-wrapped bodies of two young women. The oldest was likely in her 20s or early 30s, while the much younger girl was perhaps 8 to 10 years old. Autopsies later revealed that the cause of death for both individuals had been brutal blunt force trauma. Yet while it was easy to determine how they died, discerning who they were was a far more difficult task. The older of the two victims was a young Caucasian, perhaps in her late 20s or early 30s, but with traces of Native American ancestry. Her teeth, marked by multiple fillings and 3 extractions, hinted at a life of personal and perhaps familial neglect. She also had curly brown hair and was somewhere between 5 feet 2 and 5 feet 7 inches tall. Found beside her was a girl no older than 11, but possibly as young as 5, and she bore signs of a hard life. In life, she stood between 4'3" and 4'6" tall, and pneumonia had severely scarred her lungs. She had a crooked front tooth. There were noticeable gaps between her top teeth, but unlike the older females, her teeth bore no fillings. Police appealed to the public for information, but when no one came forward to claim the nameless victims, they were laid to rest in an Allenstown cemetery under a simple tombstone bearing the following inscription: "Here lies the mortal remains, known only to God, of a woman aged 23 to 33 and a girl child aged 8 to 10. Their slain bodies were found on November 10, 1985, in Bear Brook State Park. May their souls find peace in God's loving care." For a long, long time, it seemed the females' identities would forever remain a mystery. Yet 15 years later, on May 9th of the year 2000, the woods whispered another secret. Near the exact same spot the first barrel was found, investigators uncovered a second 55-gallon drum lying just below the original crime scene's boundaries. Somehow, it had been missing during the initial search, and inside were the remains of 2 children. They too had been dispatched via blunt force trauma. The older child had been between the ages of 2 and 4 years old when she was murdered, and had stood at a mere 3 feet 8 inches tall. The police also determined her pronounced overbite, along with a gap between her front teeth, may have given her a distinctive and easily recognizable smile. The youngest was between the ages of 1 and 3 years old, a toddler whose life was cut short before it could truly begin. She stood between 2 feet 1 and 2 feet 6 inches tall, had long blonde or light brown hair, and like the others, she had a gap between her 2 front teeth. In the early days in the investigation, detectives cast a wide net, sharing details of the case across the United States and into parts of Canada, and what amounted to a desperate search for answers. They chased down hundreds of leads, ruling out at least 10 possible identities for the victims in the process. But even after weeks upon weeks of solid investigation, the names of the woman and 3 girls remained elusive. In June of 2013, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children breathed new life into the case by unveiling a series of updated facial reconstructions. These weren't just sketches. They were digitally rendered images which included important physiological details such as the gaps and overbites that shaped the victims' faces. They were, however, rendered in a haunting black and white, as their skin tones and eye colors were details that had not yet been determined. As science advanced, so did the clues, because in 2015, DNA profiling unlocked a key piece of the puzzle. Analysis of their mitochondrial DNA showed the oldest victim was the mother of the oldest and youngest girls, and they were believed to have lived together in the northeastern United States for at least 2 weeks to 3 months prior to their deaths. They must have moved to the Bear Brook area not too long before their deaths, possibly in an attempt to escape their killer. DNA analysis also confirmed that the 3rd child was indeed the daughter of Terry Peder Rasmussen, a serial killer who'd passed away in prison back in 2010. He was convicted of just 1 murder, but was linked to at least 5 more in a series of crimes that stretched across the country between 1978 and 2002. Due to his use of many aliases, most notably Bob Evans, Rasmussen became known by the chilling moniker, the Chameleon Killer. In 1999, a young man posted a message on the website Ancestry.com hoping to find Sarah, an older half-sister he'd never met, who was born in California during her father's time in the Marines. Nearly 2 decades later, in October 2018, a librarian turned amateur detective named Rebecca Heath stumbled across the man's post while scouring the internet for clues to the identities of the Bear Brook victims. After digging deeper, Heath learned that Sarah's mother, Marlise Honeychurch, had an older daughter from a previous marriage, and their ages chillingly aligned with the 3 related victims found in Allenstown barrels. Another breakthrough came when a relative Heath contacted revealed that Marlise had married a man named Rasmussen. Convinced that she had cracked the case, Heath shared her discovery with Detective Peter Headley, setting the stage for a long overdue reckoning. On June 6, 2019, New Hampshire police had a press conference in which they revealed the identities of 3 of the Bear Brook victims. The eldest was Marlise Elizabeth Honeychurch, born in 1954, and her daughters were Marie Elizabeth Vaughn, born in 1971, and Sarah Lynn McWaters, born in 1977. The family had vanished from their home in La Puente, California around Thanksgiving of 1978. And it was deemed no coincidence that Marlise had been dating Terry Peder Rasmussen at the time. Following a heated argument with her mother, Marlise stormed out, taking her daughters with her and cutting all ties with her family. She then began using the alias Elizabeth Evans for legal documents in May of 1980, no doubt as an attempt to avoid being found. According to friends, Marlise's life prior to meeting Rasmussen had been a tapestry of failed relationships. She married Marie's father in June of 1971, but divorced him just a few years later in 1974. She then wed young Sarah's father in September of that same year, but they too separated shortly after their engagement. By the time she began dating Rasmussen, Marlise had regained custody of both her daughters, but unfortunately, this put them right in the clutches of one of America's most elusive serial killers. In 2002, Terry Peder Rasmussen was found guilty of murdering his then-wife, Jun. His pattern involved forming relationships with women and their children, often living with them for months or years before killing them. The Bear Brook victims were killed by blunt force trauma, then dismembered and disposed of in barrels, exactly the way Rasmussen disposed of Jun. But what sets the Bear Brook murders apart from his other works of malice is that in this case, Rasmussen chose to murder his own daughter, his own flesh and blood. Over the years, many have asked why, but unfortunately, it seems his motivation will forever remain a mystery. In November 2019, a funeral was held in Allenstown to honor Marlise and Marie. Their names were etched on a new headstone to replace the one that had mourned them as unknowns. While family members, including some of Marlise's relatives and Rasmussen's daughter from his first marriage, gathered to say goodbye. Little Sarah, on the other hand, was laid to rest in Connecticut, closer to her father's family at the behest of her elderly paternal grandparents. Marlise Honeychurch, Marie Vaughn, and Sarah McWaters each had their lives cut short before being buried in rusted oil drums, but they were lucky enough to have their names restored. The same cannot be said for the fourth child's identity. Known only as Rasmussen's daughter through advanced DNA testing, the identity of the young girl found in the second drum remains a mystery. Her mother is believed to be one of Rasmussen's victims, but much like her daughter, her exact identity remains unknown. In 2021, forensic investigators traced the fourth girl's lineage to relatives in Pearl River County, Mississippi, while around the same time, Rasmussen's daughter from his first marriage shared a haunting memory. Andrea Steers believes she met this girl, whom she calls Jane Doe, when they were both very young and recalls her quite possibly being half Asian. Yet even with so many pieces of the puzzle having already fallen into place, the full story of this child still lingers in the shadows, waiting to be told. The Bear Brook murders, having been shrouded in mystery for decades, paint a haunting picture of loss and resilience, where the persistent pursuit of truth reclaimed lost identities from the clutches of a serial killer. In one case, the investigation was taken up by an unpaid member of the general public, a librarian who dedicated her spare time to delivering answers to those who needed them most. Rasmussen might have forced his own personal darkness on the world, but it seems for every one monster who sows pain and death, there are hundreds of good-natured citizens lighting candles to guide the way. May they be commended, and may they continue their fight against evil until, God willing, there is no more evil to fight.
Hey friends, thanks so much for watching. Just a quick heads up, I release new videos every second Tuesday at 7 p.m. EST. Also check out my main channel, Let's Read, where you can hear longer compilations of interesting, scary stories just like these. And if you prefer audio only, feel free to check out the Let's Read podcast, located anywhere you listen to podcasts, all linked in the description below. Thanks so much, friends, and I'll see you in the next one.